"We're at the very hairy edge of the technology," said Katherine Follette, an astronomer at Amherst College. In the case of planets embedded in disks, absolutely every single one of them is still debated heavily. This ambiguity is intimately tied to the same messy environments that would make these planets special. One instrument leading the search is Sphere, mounted on the Very Large Telescope in Chile's Atacama Desert, which obtained the 8 recent protoplanetary disk images. Another, which Follette works on, is the Gemini Planet Imager (GPI), a rival instrument on another Chilean mountain. Both were designed to catch photons from planets around other stars, unlike most techniques for study exoplanets that rely on more indirect signatures. Both also produce data that's easiest to interpret when they're trained on uncluttered, older solar systems where disks have already eroded. These cameras need ways to peel faint pinpricks of light away from bright host stars, like finding a firefly sitting on the rim of a distant spotlight. They use adaptive optics, a technology that tracks fluctuations in the atmosphere and then warps its own optics in real time to compensate. This cancels out Earth's roiling air, detwinkling the night sky to achieve higher resolution. They also use coronagraphs, which block out light from the star. And on top of that, these planet-hunting cameras employ yet another trick called differential imaging. Sphere, for example, takes 2 simultaneous pictures through different polarized filters. Starlight itself isn't polarized, so the star looks the same in both versions. It can be subtracted away. But when light scatters, it gets polarized. This allows astronomers to accentuate the photons that have bounced off a disk or a planet. Algorithms then search for leftover points of light. But when looking for planets within disks, the algorithms can confuse clumps and clouds for newborn worlds. Follette and colleagues have spent the past few years trying to analyze these false signals. They also studied puzzling planet candidates, including some that don't seem to be orbiting their host star in accordance with Kepler's laws of motion, as all planets would. Meanwhile, there's another path to planets unfolding in parallel. Although Sphere and GPI haven't unambiguously found a forming world, they have managed to take the sharpest ever pictures of protoplanetary disks themselves. Finally seen up close, these disks host a menagerie of strange features that may be linked to planet formation. That has completely changed the game, said Konstantin Batygin, an astrophysicist at the California Institute of Technology. It has been revolutionary. The problem lies in associating these features with the putative planets causing them. And that's not easy, either. We talk about disks as signposts of planets, said Follette. But if they're signposts of planets, they're ones that we have no idea how to interpret yet. Spiral cradles consider a striking pattern first noticed in 2012. In at least half a dozen protoplanetary disks, something seems to be winding gas and dust into seashell whorls like the arms of spiral galaxies. Astrophysicists have 2 main ideas to explain what's making these spiral arms. Both borrow from a decades-old theory of galactic spirals. According to this idea, gas and dust spinning around a newborn star begin to pile up in a celestial traffic jam. Something has to trigger the initial snarl-up, however. Astronomers have suggested that, in stars surrounded by heavy disks, those that weigh at least a quarter as much as the star they orbit, gravitational instabilities can cause pileups of material into spiral arms. But researchers have found many spiral disks that appear to be far below this mass threshold, intimating that another mechanism may be at work. perhaps a hidden puppeteer is to blame. In 2015, a team led by Dong, the Arizona astrophysicist, built simulations that showed how giant planets a little bigger than Jupiter could trigger spiral whirls, too. The planet would sit right at the tip of one of the arms and drag the spiral along as it orbited the star. If this is the case, every spiral is like a giant arrow pointing toward the field's ultimate quarry, a planet in the process of being born. In 2016, Dong's team found evidence that these spirals can be triggered by a massive body. In this case, the triggering object orbiting the star HD 100,453 was a dwarf star, which is easier to spot than a planet. But it served as a proof of concept. After that, people started believing more in the model. Dong said, finding an arm-tip planet itself would seal the deal, but astronomers are still waiting. In a recent paper in the astrophysical journal Letters, a team led by Bin Ren, a researcher at Johns Hopkins University, gathered and analyzed data from MWC 758's spiral going back more than a decade. Over this time, Ren's analysis shows the whirls may have rotated ever so slightly, at about 0.6 of a degree per year. This rotation would be expected from a giant planet out at the tip of an arm that orbits the star every 600 years or so, Ren said. Such a planet, if it exists, is still hiding. Of course, even if spirals are conclusively linked to planets, they won't lead the way to all newborn worlds. In simulations, only gas giant planets are hefty enough to draw spiral patterns. Smaller worlds would have to be discovered through other means. And not all protoplanetary disks host spirals, either. For example, none of the new sphere images of disks around Sun-like stars have spiral arms. That suggests the spiral process, whatever it is, may be more efficient around more massive stars, said Henning Avenhaus of the Max Planck Institute for Astronomy in Heidelberg, but they and many other protoplanetary disks do show something else, something perhaps even more promising: gaps. Planets in the cracks. In the fall of 2014, astronomers testing ALMA, a collection of radio dishes in the Chilean Andes, decided to train it on the most massive protoplanetary disk they could find. When the resulting picture of empty gaps and thick rings in a system called HL Tauri was later displayed at an internal ALMA meeting, it stopped the show. "We just spent the rest of the meeting talking about HL Tau," said Lucas Cheza, an astronomer at Diego Portales University in Chile. Looking at the gaps, the assembled scientists debated whether they were produced by planets. ALMA scientists later studied images of another, nearby system called TW Hydra, which show similar gaps in even higher detail. But neither system can settle the issue of whether the gaps are caused by planets or by something else. The debate is still ongoing. Cheza said,